Harrison had to have known that the mountain biking trail that he was going to build would not be nearly as fun or interesting as the ones that were already existing. And so you know that it was because he wanted to experience the process and the work itself of creating that trail and not just have the end result. When he fixed his sister's bike up, like how connective was that between siblings?
But I think being witness to this is kind of the new bar for what it looks like when someone is actually in a passion and it is self-led.
What if I told you that a story could teach your child more history, science, math, and literature than a year of textbooks? Welcome to the Story Schooling Podcast. I'm Angel Selden, author of Curiouser.
And I'm Sandy Fouts, co-founder of Wonderwell Learning.
Yay, Kristi! So good to have you.
I'm thrilled to be here.
So Kristi's my friend who lives in Minnesota with her husband and 2 children, ages 9 and 11, and they attend my program, World Explorers. Kristi is the chief experience architect at Forethought Wealth and has been homeschooling for 5 years now. Welcome, Kristi.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So just give us a brief overview of your homeschool journey, Kristi, like how you came to start homeschooling.
Yeah. So Harrison, our oldest, was a kindergartner during the start of the pandemic, and first grade was still kids in masks in a public school setting. And he shared, I don't want to wear a mask. And I said, I don't blame you. So I said, I'm not doing distance learning again. So let's embark on the homeschooling journey. And here we are 5 years later. And then our daughter, Elliot, when it would have been her time to jump into that world, there just wasn't a thought. It was like, this is what we're doing. We're homeschooling. And now we've been on that adventure ever since.
All right. So Kristi, you've been telling me about your son, Harrison's passion that he's developed for mountain biking. So tell us how that started, like what sparked that interest and how it evolved from there.
Yeah. 2 summers ago, Harrison went to a single track that's by our house, a mountain biking trail, with a buddy and his dad, and thought, oh, this was kind of fun. That was interesting. I think they went one other time that summer. And then this past summer 2025, Harrison went again, but with Nathan, my husband, and they went and had a great time. And then that just became a, hey, I'd like to go the single track. Hey, I'd like to go to the single track. Hey, dad or mom, could you bring myself and like another buddy to the single track? Could you bring this person? I noticed that my bike is not ideal for jumps or for the train that I'm on. Is there any way we can look at getting another bike? And knowing what we know, Nathan, my husband, knows enough to be dangerous about the biking world. And he said, I mean, we can look into that, but like, we want you to understand what the costs are associated with it. So we put that onus on him. And so quickly Harrison was down the rabbit hole of the types of bikes he could get and what that looks like, and quickly understood how fast those expenses can increase in terms of the sport itself. So that led us to say, well, what's another avenue? If it's like, oh, this feels like a lot, what could that look like? So we introduced him to Marketplace and a couple of other online sites that he could do some research on used bikes to see if that was an option. And at that point, we also said that we were willing to contribute, but that he also needed to contribute to a bike. So he agreed to that and just went down a rabbit hole of trying to understand what is the best bike? How does this work? What are the different variations? And let me tell you, there are a lot. So I have learned a ton about mountain biking through Harrison's research. And that led to, and this was, I don't know, other people's experience, but I think when you see your child in deep curiosity and passion about something, it's not over a course. I mean, this initial phase was like rapid. Every day it's like doing the research and he's in it, right? It's kind of consuming him in a really inspiring way. So
like for hours a day.
Hours a day. And then there's this presentation back to, this is what I've learned and this is what I'm thinking, and okay, I found this online and here's 3 different bike brands I think that would be good options. Like, Dad, can you verify? Because I was putting the onus, I do other things with him, so I was kind of partnering my husband and Harrison on this. Dad, can you verify that these, like, what do you think? Like, this is what my research is showing, but like, can you double check that? How fast can we do it? I found one. It's like 3 hours from here. We were like, well, that doesn't really seem like a great option. So he just kept daily feeding and feeding and feeding. And I would say within less than 2 weeks, he had found a bike within 40 minutes from here at a price point that he wanted and was feeling really good about making the investment. And we put a little bit towards it, but really he used his own resources to invest in being able to go experience the mountain biking trail in a way that he was feeling frustrated that it wasn't happening because he recognized that the bike that he had wasn't the right fit for what he wanted to do. So he loves not just the downhill portion of it, but there's all these jumps that bring him a lot of joy. And the bike that he had, it just wasn't the right fit for it. So that was really interesting. And I think I'll just share a side note. In the world that we live in, I think there's this screens and how are we using them? And kids are on screens all the time, but it's really relevant and necessary in this freedom to, with boundaries, but to be able to explore and go down a variety of rabbit holes. So in conjunction of not just what equipment do I want, that's here are all the videos I'm watching to help me understand how the bikes are being used, the pros and cons of each of them by people that are close to his age, by adults. So there's this like taking in the information and then creating his ability to review the reviews, right? Because that's basically what you're doing is he's out there trying to source what works best. So he gets his new bike, is really enjoying it, is out on the trails, but the location of this single track from our house is a 10-minute drive. But from a parent's perspective, it isn't always like easy to drop what you're doing, right? To go make this thing happen. So we live in a neighborhood that does give the opportunity to drive through another neighborhood. And then the road that this trail is off of is currently under construction. So Harrison approached us and said, I want to bike there. So it's a roughly 30-minute bike ride to the trail before you're on the adventure of biking in and of itself. And summer is kind of the peak when we finally hit heat in Minnesota. So I think this is like end of July. So it's like 80-degree weather. And he's like, yeah, I want to do it. So asked if he, and checked in with some other parents, but he and a few buddies bike in the 80-degree weather to the trail by themselves and spend a couple of hours there plus bike back. So they're on this roughly 3-ish hour adventure. And that just kind of became a little bit of a pattern that they were in, having a lot of fun, learning a lot, definitely testing their, I don't know, freedom, right? He's in middle school. You're just in this phase of learning, of exploring the world where autonomy, I think, feels really important. And so that felt really like a gift. And I think it stretches for me. It definitely stretches some parenting, just those parts of us that want to be like, ooh, is this, or I'll speak to my own experience. Like, is this what I'm ready for? And then I'm like, well, I don't know if we're ever ready. So we gotta allow him to try this thing, which was beautiful. And I think to witness him flourish with that freedom and then the confidence that shows up, not just with that freedom, but with like really him being able to say, this is my bike. So as he's showing his friends, this is my bike, and making videos, like he's a kid that loves to use video editing software. So that became another thing that he kind of pulled in. What was, I'm going to video my bike. I'm going to add that kind of layer of fun to what he was doing as a different way to have fun with it, express himself with it. But then the like next iteration of it. So we live, just to put out there, we live in a suburban neighborhood. So we don't have land. We aren't on like the woods in our backyard or anything. And Harrison approached my husband and I and said, I want to build a mountain biking trail in our yard. And I was like, can you say more about that? And he said, I'm doing some research and it doesn't have to, he started listing out, it doesn't have to impact the neighbors on either side. I can make sure that it stays in the confines of our yard. And he like had made a map of what he wanted it to look like. And I said, I need a little bit of time to sit with this. I love the creativity. I love the ideation. I think I just need to understand this. Well, as I said before, I think when they're in their passion, when they're on to something that's really speaking to their souls, it's not okay, well, I'm willing to wait. So that put Harrison into further research around being able to find a visual. He didn't say this, like he wasn't expressing this to me, but what I'm observing is his commitment to, I just have to find the right visual to be able to show my parents so that I can make this thing happen. And that's essentially where he landed. So he had shown me a couple, and a couple of the examples were nothing like that felt similar to our environment. And so I was trying to envision, like, how does this? And then he showed one that was still not really anything like we have, but he said, this is closer to, like, it doesn't have as many jumps and it doesn't have the woods. So I feel like you might be able to see it better. And I text my husband and I said, do you have 5 minutes? Because it was during the day. And it was a day that I was home with them. And I said, I think we just go for it. Like, clearly, this is something that's really important to him, and there's nothing bad that can come of it. Like, it's just a lawn. And so we said, all right. My husband was like, you're good with this? I was like, yeah, totally. Like, what else why not? Right. And so the really beautiful thing that transpired was just the look on his face to know that we were all in was pure delight and excitement and joy. So that obviously, when just a yes to something not tangible, right? It wasn't about a purchase, it was about, I have this project, this passion project that I get to pour into, is what I felt like I was witnessing in Harrison. But the other really beautiful thing that I think came out of it was observing other people's response to our yes around it, which I think is always interesting, right? Like neighbors, and not out of fear of this going to be an issue for our property, which I think would be a valid question. More of, you're letting your kid do what? And I was like, oh, he's building a mountain biking trail. So much so that one neighbor came out and I was gone and he was working on it. And the secondary part of this story that's beautiful is that it actually ended up being a project that multiple kids in the neighborhood got invested in over the summer, which is just like, I have goosebumps thinking about it. So they're met with, because I'm not home, and Harrison had full permission to work on the project, and they're outside. And so I was on my way back and hear this other adult that's like, are you sure? Like, really panicked, which I guess I could appreciate. But I was like, no, they have absolute full permission to be engaged in this project. And I think, shock probably of that this is something that we would allow to happen. But it was really awesome to watch Harrison. He had created the design of what he wanted. He became the foreman, the architect, the designer, right? So he's in this leadership position, which I think, what human at almost any stage doesn't love being in that position, to like have a voice and to be able to kindly give instruction and direction. So it really became this awesome project to watch unfold. And last summer, my husband does some woodworking. They had built like a physical jump out of, like, just a bike jump out of plywood and some other materials. And so our house sits on a hill. So there's like this natural embankment. And Harrison used that, like, kind of, he and some buddies like put that in and then created all these berms. And so towards mid-August this year, we start to observe, like, there's kind of just this lull in terms of the project in our yard. Not a lull around Harrison wanting to go ride. I mean, that, like, sometimes it was like, yes, I want to go, and sometimes days would pass, but it was really specific about the project in our yard. And I was able to observe both my husband and I kind of at different times wrestle with, well, doesn't he have to finish it? Like, this needs to get done, right? This like messaging of this has to happen, or the question of, I was personally wrestling with, okay, if he doesn't have to finish it, what does that mean? Is that how we develop the ability to actually achieve a sense of completion? Or maybe not individually, not would Harrison have experienced a sense of completion? It was more like, if we don't have him finish the project, then therefore does he become a human that does not finish projects, right? Like as an
Mm-hmm.
11-year-old, is this a trajectory? Like we really have to make sure along this journey that they are finishing everything they start. And so I watched that and I was able to witness my husband wrestle with it. And I think we even, probably like maybe toed in on some messaging around that. I was trying to really be more of an observer of myself in that. I'll say the messiness of it. Like, is this me? Is it society? Is it fear that's driving the conversation? What is it about the high need for completion? Because it's probably mine, not his.
Mm-hmm.
It's Harrison's. So we sat with it. And at this time, Harrison had actually, about a few weeks prior to that tapering off, Harrison had expressed interest in seeing if there was another like way that he could learn more technical skills for riding. So we didn't research, we reached out to a friend who's in the biking world that works for a biking company. My husband researched, like, are there any groups? Are there hobbies? Like, are there a group of kids around here that would want to meet up on the regulars? We had told Harrison, and he was researching on his own, like, are there any teams or something of that? And we kind of came to 3 options, which is like, we get a group of kids together on a consistent basis. Cause that's kind of what he was looking for. What he articulated to us is I would just love a group of people to ride with on a regular basis. But then when he heard that there was a way to join a possible local team, so that was what he said he would like to do, like to try. And then, of course, he's like, but I still want to be able to ride with my friends whenever I want, which, of course. So those 2 things kind of coincided in terms of he's doing this thing just a couple of times a week for fun. Side note, the mountain biking community is very welcoming, and it is such a different energy than some other youth sports, just in terms of come when it works for your family and no pressure. And it was just a really lovely experience that he had.
I want to dissect the experience and we'll talk about everything he learned from that, as well as I want to talk about the principles behind this that work. Like, because Sandy and I talk about principles all the time, but I think it's helpful to connect it to this real example.
Yeah.
And then let's wrap up with, at the end, we'll talk about how he had renewed interest. I'd love to have a conversation about that, what you were grappling with. Like, this is what our culture, our society, the world that we grow up in values this. And we're not even aware of it because it's our worldview, and questioning those things.
In this experience of being on the team, he then is exposed to a new level of bikes that are available because he's witnessing his equipment on all these variety of trails now. It's not just here's this trail that I'm at locally. I'm driving a little bit. I'm experiencing all this different terrain. So then that was interesting to watch him then re-jump back in to a whole nother level of research. And what that has looked like is him. So first, let me back up. In this process of wanting to understand bikes more, his old bike went to his sister and the gears weren't switching as it was kind of only operating between 2 gears. And then he noticed that the brakes were kind of like she had to press him really hard to get him to work because he really rode that bike, to say the least. So out of boredom, legit, and we've all heard this, I'm bored, right? Like if that pops up, I'm bored. Out of that and being comfortable with hearing that without giving direction on what to do about it and just trusting that the angst that a human can be wrestling with in that I'm bored, that day, he was not only in figuring out 2 types of bikes he's trying to figure out that he wants to reinvest in or upgrade his bike, the new bike that he's already purchased. He took his sister's bike, changed the tires out to make sure that they were running smoothly because they were rubbing up against brake pads, fixed her shifting, like so now all of her gears work, and readjusted her brakes. And then there's like a special when you're doing something with a bike chain. So clearly I know a lot more about bikes than I did 90 days ago or 120 days ago. And then also did this thing with her chain that makes it run much more smoothly. And I just think I have lots of comparisons for other interests that Harrison has had in his life. But I think being witness to this is kind of the new bar for what it looks like when someone is actually in a passion and it is self-led.
Mm-hmm.
I have almost a pulse point to bump up against. And that has actually caused me to evaluate some other areas of our lives and ways that we spend our time and things of that nature to say, like, this is interesting. I wonder what would happen if we just shifted how we did things over in this other area a little bit, if that would shine a different light to, like, is this other thing really a passion, or is this something that we're doing out of habit? Because I think even at a young age, we can get into habit. And are we checking in with ourselves to, like, is this really how I want to spend my time? Because I think that's a gift we can give our children, is to teach them, like, everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. So who you spend your time with is really important. Like, you have a choice on that, and how you spend your time. Like, are you checking in with yourself? If something is taking a lot of your free time or just taking your time, are you checking in with yourself to make sure, like, hey, I don't know whatever works for you, but on a scale of 1 to 10, is this kind of an 8 or 9 most of the time? It doesn't mean that something's not going to be hard work. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hard work is different than being on autopilot with something. So don't mistake hard work for, like, ooh, this feels hard, because it is hard. And I just have to, this is part of the process of the struggle with this thing. And by struggle, I don't mean I'm forced to finish it and stay with it. It's just like, as I continue to develop and refine my skills or whatnot around this, um, am I continually checking in with myself to make sure that this is a joyful part of my lifestyle?
Right. You know, it reminded me of a quote, a Viktor Frankl quote, when you were talking about just how he was enduring all, like, hours of research and preparation. And it was because he had this end goal that he wanted so badly. There's this, Viktor Frankl said, those who have a why to live for can bear almost any how. And so he had that why. That mountain biking, being able to perform well and do hard tricks on that mountain biking trail was such a powerful motivator for him, that he could endure hours of research. Whereas if you had assigned to him a research project, even if you said, all right, we're going to do a president, you can pick any president, but you're going to research a president, he just would not have been as
Mm.
engaged, and he wouldn't have gotten as much out of it. And he worked way more hours than he would have if you had assigned him a project, because it was of his own volition.
Yeah, 100. I can say even earlier in our homeschooling journey, like, we dabbled in, like, we're going to do this thing. What you just shared, I have firsthand experience. It maybe wasn't about a president, but we're going to look into this thing. And you can see, if you are an observer of your humans, you can see when there's spark and joy and a internal motivation to do something, and there's nothing like it. I think too, not just the bike, but he was so committed to getting a yes on building this mountain biking trail, so committed to getting a yes, that was also so much research. So much research. Because I wasn't there yet. Nathan wasn't really either, but I
Yeah.
wasn't there yet.
And here's the thing, Harrison had to have known that the mountain biking trail that he was going to build would not be nearly as fun or interesting as the ones that were already existing. And so you know that it was because he wanted to experience the process and the work itself of creating that trail, and not just have the end result.
Yeah, I mean, that's 100% it, because the excitement of talking about, and then there's going to be a berm here, and I think we could do rollers here. Just, it's my creation, my design, the whiteboard maps that were drawn out, then the hard copy map that was made to bring out to the work site in the yard. So we did not have all the equipment. We didn't have a wheelbarrow. His first day, it had just rained, and he said, I'm going to start today because I feel like it's going to be easier to pull back grass because it's wet. So he went into that and quickly was like, this is a lot of work. So it was, okay, what supplies are available in the garage that we have? Okay, here's what I feel like we're missing. Wait, I know so-and-so's dad, who's not even near his age. I think this kiddo's like 4 years younger than him. I'm going to go ask this kid's dad, because I know he has a wheelbarrow. I've seen him use these 3 or 4 other tools. I feel like he would be a good resource. So going and asking, that wasn't, hey, can you ask Dave if we can borrow his stuff, right? That's him going to make that ask. In fact, I didn't even have to, he did all of that on his own. I wasn't even looped in on that part of it. Like, I'm going to go ask so and so if I can. That was just him being resourceful. I don't have
Mm-hmm.
the things that I need. So where can I go get them? So it's this problem solving that you see.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just this reminder of, if we can always have the lens of, can we look where the learning is happening? Because it's happening all the time. It's just not. And I was raised in a traditional public school environment, and it just really, the real like depth, the stuff that really lands is not where you might think it would. And that is, it's a gift. It's a gift, because I also think we wouldn't see it if we weren't open to it. If we weren't willing to wrestle with any stories, any old narratives that are living inside of us. I say us being myself and my husband, right? For our family, like anything that pops up for us as parents when you're on this journey, can you be kind and calm that part of yourself that was taught that something had to be a different way, and be open to being curious, which is what we hope for them. Like, can I be as curious as I would desire for them to be in the world? Can I have that same approach to their learning?
Something I just want to call out here
Yeah.
first real quick on the parent side. The thing that I noticed from you, Kristi, is that you paused so much to allow the experience to happen. There were several times when you were telling the story where I thought, I or another parent may take over and, oh, dad's into bikes. Oh, let me find you the perfect bike. And he takes over because he's excited about it. And you strip the child of the joy, and you take that joy from them, and you don't allow them to experience it because you're just the parent. And so you take over. And so I love that you gave him that gift of pausing and allowing him to create himself and to think through it and to problem solve. You didn't solve every problem for him. And what you did in the term of a mentorship is you led him and you supported him, but you didn't do it for him. In every step along the way, there were so many places where you could have taken over or done it for him, but you allowed him that experience, which fueled him even more, because we rob our kids so much when we take it from them, and you allowed him to do that. So that's one of the thoughts that I was thinking this whole time, about how powerful that is and how many lessons we can take as mentors for our children, to be a leader there for them and to support them. And
Mhm.
not so much as a teacher. We often just want to teach them and fill them, but that's not our job.
Mhm.
Our job is to be there. It's for them to learn and have that experience, because it's so much more powerful and impactful for them in the long run.
Well, I love that idea of the pause. But you didn't always just say yes, yes, yes immediately. One thing that
Mhm.
stood out to me that I don't know if I have thought through fully before was when Harrison asked to build a mountain biking trail in your backyard, you didn't just say yes right away. You responded with a lot of questions, which sparked more research, more planning, because he probably didn't even realize that, oh, I need to think this through more. Oh, yeah, what about that? I'm going to have to look into that, before he just started. And it reminded me of when a scientist does some experiments or research and makes a discovery. When they share that with their peers typically, and this is healthy, don't accept that right away, right? They respond with a little skepticism, a little pushback. They point out their blind spots and say, well, what about this? Well, how did you control for this variable in this experiment? And they're like, oh, yeah, maybe I didn't even consider that might be a variable. I better redo the experiment and control for that variable. This is just a real life experience, and you enhanced his learning by responding with a lot of questions and not just by saying yes. One more comment about Kristi's mentorship. She said, I don't know if you're ever ready for something before you do it, so let's just let him try this thing. Reminded me of a part in The Comfort Crisis. Well, there's a Japanese term, misogi, and I can't remember exactly what the original meaning is, so I don't want to say this is the original meaning, but he interviewed this guy who took that term and started creating really difficult and kind of bizarre challenges for himself, and saying that was his misogi. He would do one misogi a year. And he said one of his parameters was that the challenge had to be difficult enough. There was about a 50-50 chance of success or failure. And this intentionally taking on something that you actually have a pretty good chance of failing at is okay. We don't need to say, well, you're not ready for that, because I want to make sure there's like a 95% chance you won't fail at this. Let them try and let them fail. Even if you know in your mind, wow, there's a really good chance they'll fail at that, but I'm here to support them as a mentor in whatever way they need me. I don't know if they'll succeed at this, and that's okay. And there's so much learning that can happen from that. That's a very grown-up thing. Like grown-ups do. That's who creates our mountain biking trails, is adults. And he wants to do this adult thing. And to allow him to play at that. And we won't get into that now, but I think that will connect with when we talk later about when he lost interest in finishing the mountain bike trail. So we'll get back to that later.
There's a quote that I love, is to allow your kids to do dangerous things carefully.
Mhm.
And that's what you allowed him to do. It was, okay, he wants to ride his mountain bike this far away. And you guys thought through that. You talked through it. It's something that not all parents would allow their children to do. They would just immediately say, no, that's not safe. But you found, he talked about a way to be able to do this thing that seemed a little more dangerous, even in mountain biking. All of these things could be considered really dangerous things, using the tools that you're allowing him to use, all of those pieces, but you allowed him to do those dangerous things. And when we allow our kids to do these things that are dangerous, they're able to self-evaluate what is actually dangerous and what's not, because we're not telling them anymore. We're allowing them to develop their own sense of judgment so that they're building that character trait for their future too, so that as they grow up, they have that skill of being able to evaluate situations that could then potentially be dangerous, but they've had that skill and you help develop that skill. Yeah.
Can I add something that ties into,
Please do.
there's a trust, right? Here's your freedom, and that freedom comes with trust. And that, I think we have really intentionally tried to develop, which parents are not trying to do this, but like a deep trust, and that trust is felt on a deep level, and that's where the freedom lies, right? Because we can trust so deeply. To that end, here, yes, you may go to the mountain biking trail, and within the trail, there are different colors that give different levels, just like a ski hill, right? So like green, blue, black of what you're going to ride. And then there's a jump line, which is like some of these have like crazy, insane jumps with really big drops. So much from a percentage standpoint, higher probability of getting hurt. So our ask was, yes, you may go, but if there's not an adult in the parking lot, so even from our standpoint, like nobody has to be on the trail with you, but if there isn't somebody that could respond with immediacy to an emergency, we would prefer that you're not. The answer is, or the rules, that we don't want you on the jump line. So that was an agreed upon. So the first time they go, so he and two buddies go, they have fun, everybody comes back. That night, and I know you two have talked about this, I think in your first episode, just the magic that happens when we read aloud at night, and this unfolding of, it's almost like the veil, right? Between the veil thins and there's just this natural ability to share. So Harrison shared I didn't even ask, unprompted. I want to tell you something. I was like, great. What's going on? We went on the jump line today. And I was like, you did? Can you say more about that? So I have fought every instinct. It feels natural now, but initially to get to this point, right? So like as a parent, you're like, this has been worth it to not have big responses, because they are going to, and they should make mistakes. They have to be able to press boundaries. They have to be able to try something. So that was followed by more questions. Say more about that. How did that feel when you were doing that? How do you feel about it now? I'm so proud of you for telling us, right? Like that's always the most important thing. We know that truth is like foundational in our family. And every family should do what works for them. But in our family, when you're honest and you tell the truth, as long as you learn from your mistake, the message is that you told the truth. And that's the learning opportunity, is in the sharing. And so I just think that speaks to what you were just saying. And I think that is because there's a sense of freedom. There is a sense of, I have autonomy because my parents have a deep level of trust in me. And because of that, and because we have worked really hard to be calm in a moment that maybe generationally isn't how parents would have naturally responded or been in not had the capacity to respond in that same way, that has come back in a really beautiful way for us and just continues. It's a gift as a parent when your choices are affirmed. And the choices being to give them autonomy and freedom.
Well, that builds directly into one of the principles that we talk about, which is relationships. So this whole experience has fostered a relationship just in the way that you shared. Another thing that I thought was really neat was that when he came to you to ask you that he would even think that he could ask his parents if they could rip up the lawn. Like he was able to think outside of the norm because he had been given the freedom to think outside the box and hadn't been squashed so much. Like he was allowed to have ideas that weren't always squashed. And so, I mean, he obviously came to it sounded like not sure if he would get a yes. Like he knew it was a big ask, but he still felt like he could, that he didn't automatically have an inside voice that would be trained. This inside voice would be trained that told him that would be ridiculous. Like that would be so cool to build my own track, but that's not something that we could actually do. He believed that he could ask a question that big and he's allowed to think that big. And what a beautiful character development that you've fostered. I imagine, that comes over time, but the relationship to not be afraid to ask that kind of question, that I think that's another really cool principle within there. So within that, I'd like to ask what other kind of relationships were fostered through this whole experience that you're having, that he had, maybe what other kind of relationships? You mentioned the neighbors, how we had to reach out and how it became a neighborhood project. So that's another piece of it that I think you've already mentioned about relationships.
Yeah. And I think too, just making certain as well, like communicating with close neighbors on either side of us so they understood that their properties weren't going to be impacted by what he was doing, and navigating. They being this group of boys that came together collectively to work on it, had, I think driven a wheelbarrow across the neighbor's backyard, and they had to address that because the neighbors weren't happy that they drove the wheelbarrow across the backyard. They're looking for path of least resistance, right? Or like shortest destination. Like, how do we decrease our workload? And this is it. And then they realize, okay, that wasn't it. So then how do you address that? What's the right thing to do? How are we communicating? If you want to do that, what do you have to do in order to get a yes? You have like two options. Do you want to talk to, just asking again more questions for him to be able to get through that, and then engaging the other neighbor to borrow the supplies that they needed. It wasn't, can I go buy a wheelbarrow? Can I get this stomp thing, this thing that works with sod that helps lift it? So I think the other relational piece that was much more from an observation perspective. So I'm not out there with the boys, right? This is their project. I have no need to be out in the backyard with them, but it was fun to watch from our kitchen area. They found a rhythm. There was a chunk of time where they found a rhythm, and there was a specific that came over, and it took them a while to find their process. Like that was one thing I observed. Like they would try this thing. How are we going to move this dirt? Okay, the wheelbarrow's really heavy now. They've used a sled to help haul dirt away because they recognized that it was too heavy to lift up. So it was like, how do we move this from point A to point B? So let's use a snow sled because that allows us to do this more quickly and more efficiently. But they quickly, I think it was 3 or 4 days in a row, and it was hot. It was like in the 80s or maybe even low 90s. And the same crew, like the same person took on the same job for a certain amount of time, and then they would rotate. The only person that stayed the same was a young high school boy. He would have been 15 at the time. He really honed his skill of how to get the sod off before, and then the rest of them were digging. So while a group of them were doing this, another group of them were over getting additional dirt for building because they were trying to repurpose the dirt that they had, but that wasn't enough. That's been fascinating too, just to observe that the sheer volume of materials, like raw materials that they need in order to be able to do what they want to do. And then taking it so far and being frustrated with some of the design elements of it. So you can put something on paper and then actually create it. And now it's like the scientific method, right? Like I have this thing, I have this theory, I'm going to
Yeah.
do it. And then I lay it out and they're like, oh, this is the problem. The
Try and
berm,
fail. Try and fail.
try, fail, try, fail, try, fail.
There's so much overlap with character development here.
I know.
Which
That's
is
what I was
rather, I'm
thinking
like,
too.
this ability to try and fail, the problem solving that they engaged in with their teammates, communication skills, being able to ask. I think the skill of being
Yeah.
able to ask is a huge, like, what a powerful character trait to develop in life. And then to be able to address problems, like you said, with the neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap. I also thought of when he fixed his sister's bike up. Like, how connective was that between siblings? Did you have more you wanted to add?
Relationship.
I don't know if you, it's not like we can see into their souls, but I imagine that Elliot felt that connection, you know?
Oh, she was like, wait, you fixed my bike. So now all the gears are going to work. So I'm not just stuck on 2 or 5. And he said, yeah, she's like, thank you. And then that leads them to go out and ride, go test it out and have fun together. And the interesting thing too, I think one of the gifts of homeschooling that has been true for our family is the relationship that Harrison and Elliot have, which in a traditional environment would an 11-year-old boy and a recently turned 9-year-old girl have a super close relationship. And I'm not going to paint that it's perfect all the time. Like that's not the point. But Harrison has specifically commented that he feels like his relationship with Elliot is very different from what he observes his other friends and their siblings having, because they have the gift of so much time together. And she's been out there and helped and is curious about it. And Harrison, the way that I think that their relationship ties in is he is trying desperately to get her to mountain bike. He's like, I mean, we can just go really slow. You and mom can come. You don't have to do any jumps. He's like, it would be so fun. Like, I'll make sure you're safe. So it's fun to watch. When you find something that you love, you want to share it with people that you love, right? You want them to come join that world with you. And so I think that that's been fun too. Even so more recently, where 2 years ago, I went from having like a hybrid bike and a road bike to I just want like a really nice, easy cruiser bike that I can ride around that feels good on my body. And now I'm asking a friend if I can borrow one of her bikes to go try it out, because there's this thing that a human that I adore and have watched put so much time and energy into building this trail, and he's loving something. I don't always have to join it. We don't always have to be in the same world as our kids, but I would certainly love a different frame of reference to be able to enter that world with him, to say like, oh, that's the blue line. Oh, that's the green. Like, oh my gosh, that's what the jump line looks like. Like, I'll probably pause and sit over here and observe that. But it just is interesting how I think, the observation of someone who's passionate about something and is so excited about it, it's infectious. Yeah, it's infectious. It just like pulls at your heart in a good way.
I wrote down a thought. Nothing unifies people like working toward a common desired goal.
Common goal. Yeah.
I think that will connect with when we talk later about when he lost interest in finishing the mountain bike trail. This conversation continues in the next episode.
If this podcast was helpful for you, please leave us a review and share with a friend.
Until next time, start with stories and everything else will follow.
You can learn more about our other education projects at angelselda.com and wonderwelllearning.com.